What is happening, everybody? Jimmo here again, doing some very exciting work on this Toyota Prius, which is code 777 Toyota Jade Sea Metallic. And what I'm doing right now is applying a sealer over a few breakthrough areas where there's some body filler exposed, and it's going to give it that uniform color as well, like the rest. And my preppers actually really spoiled me on this. You've heard in a lot of videos I complain that they use the wrong undercoat for the color, so maybe they use a dark primer, and in this case here, this color won't cover over it very well. So they've actually used the correct value primer, so you're going to see this color is going to cover extremely well. And if you've done much spraying, you would know that often a color like this, a light blue, is kind of it's similar to reds and yellows, where they're a little bit on the transparent side. So if you don't get that ground coat right, it's not going to cover very well. And if you go back and watch, when I applied my sealer, I broke out a new gun that I haven't really shown. Well, not so much a new gun, but it's a new tip that's out from 3M. It's been out for a little while now. It's the sealer tip. So that's the 1.4, and that's what it's designed for. They have a 1. I believe it's a 1.8 that they use for primer, and they've just recently released the 1.4, which works pretty well. I did actually do some jobs where they had some 1.3 and a 1.4 base coat tip, and 3M actually gave me some crap over that because they weren't really released. They were kind of in the demo stages. So I believe they are still working on that, and I usually drill my 3M guys every time I see them to hurry up and bring them to the market because they were pretty handy for applying base coat. But anyway, back to this job here. You can see I am applying it, and it's covering extremely well. So we had to do some work on the rockers. This entire job here, it had 2 doors replaced and the fender. The doors were actually the same color. They were used doors, so we had to repaint the inside, and I'm just freshening up the outside again. And yeah, I'm trying to tail it off on the top there and sort of blend it off so I have the original color between the roof and that top rail, so it matches as well as it can. But you can see that hood, it's going to be butted right up against it, so I had to get that color like bang on. And I posed this question on Facebook, is this color going to match up against the hood and up against the bumper? Well, let me just say, up against the bumper, it never really matches from factory anyway, so that's I'm fine with that. That effect gives it that original look. But I matched the body color really well. We're going to see at the end. But to get that 100%, and to do this job 100% by the book, you want to actually blend that hood, and you'd have an exact color between the two. But a lot of the times, hoods can be difficult to blend, and oftentimes guys will just do that whole front end. So they'll do that hood, and they'll blend the fender, the top of the fender as well, just because a lot of times when you're trying to blend in the middle of a hood with metallic color, it can kind of go a little blotchy on you, and it's tough to really blend out in the center of a panel like that. And as far as how I came up with this exact color, because they've used this color on both the Yaris and the Prius, and I'm sure probably a few other different models, and even within the same plant you could have about 20 different variants of that one color depending on what time of day it was sprayed at, what temperature, and it goes on and on and on. But this is not the standard chip that I went with. I went with one of the variants. I remember standard was a little bit light. I don't know exactly which variant this is, but anyway, it seems that it was a much better choice. Also, we are using Onyx waterborne rather than the solvent, which I've shown in some of my more recent videos. And the reason I'm using the waterborne is because it gives you a little bit more time with the application than the solvent. So if I'm doing a larger job, I want everything to stay wet during the entire application. And the solvent just might have been a little bit quick for this job. And you might have noticed at the beginning there was a yellow coating on the rockers, and that's because there was a repair on the rockers, and these Toyotas come with a rocker guard from factory, which we had to reapply after that repair. So that's also the reason that it's up on its side there, up on the wooden blocks. And everybody seemed to notice my new Glazeret paint suit, and I've been having some sort of an issue remembering to put the hood up on certain coats here. So you'll see certain times I got the hood on and certain times I don't. And I think in the very first shot, since this is a detachable hood, I forgot to put the hood in completely. I'm not used to that kind of suit, but it's actually a really nice suit. I like just the material on it, and they just seem very well built. So, I like it, but I got to remember to put that hood up. So as far as the application goes, it's going to be 2 wet coats, and then after that dries off, I'm going to put on a drop coat to even out the metallics. And it looked pretty good after the second coat. It dried pretty consistent looking. Sometimes certain colors can look a little modelly, and that's when a drop coat's going to help out even more. But the drop coat also helps shift the color to the proper position, so it looks the same way as it did on the chip when I matched it originally. So also, if we had to use an improper ground coat, it might have been 3 coats, and on a job like this, it's going to cost quite a bit more on paint. So the importance of using that properly valued primer at the beginning goes quite a long way to save on costs here. So aside from that, I did have a little dirt speck in the fender that I skipped over. I didn't film that, but basically I just removed that with some 1500 grit dry sandpaper and spotted it back in real quick. And then after that I did a drop coat on the entire thing, which is coming up right here. So I'm running my trusty DeVelbis Tekna gun with the 1.5 tip on it, which is the recommended tip for Onyx. They like the big tip with this stuff. And also, if you're spraying Onyx, one thing to keep in mind, it's one of the few companies that recommend using the larger strainers. So with PPS in particular, they have a few different lids. There's a blue lid and there's a clear lid. They actually recommend that you use the clear lid for this. And Glazer's also the same way. And that otherwise, if you use too fine of a filter, you can filter out certain pigments and metallics and end up with a color that you didn't want to have. So if you find that if you're working with this stuff and you find the chips aren't lining up to what you spray, that's something to look at as well. So here's our mist coat. Basically just pull back. I've reduced my pressure, so I was spraying up around 25, 26 psi, and I'm down to about 18 right now, and I'm quite a bit further back. Aim for about 12 inches back. And you still want to put it on somewhat, you want to kind of wet it as you go. You don't want to have it really dry, or it's going to dry with a textured feel to it. And we don't want that. We want it to be a little bit wet, but you don't want to be soaking it on either. And I've got to apologize for the filming quality on this one. I had a bit of a technical difficulty with my camera, and everything on this camera here turned out to be a little bit overexposed, and you lose quite a bit of detail, so you can't exactly see a lot of what's going on. So just bear with me on this one. I'll have it fixed for the videos to come. Now generally with the blowers, I'm looking about 5 to 7 minutes in between coats, and then the last one I usually give a little bit longer, maybe 10 to 15, and then I hammer on my clear. So here we go, again using the DeVelbis Tekna gun. This time I believe it's a 1.2 on there, and there are 2 different guns, one for base and one for clear. I'm gonna get my Iwata back any day now, the WS 400, so you'll probably see that in any future videos, because that is my favorite gun right now, until maybe I try this out at RP and that maybe changes my mind. But I'm looking forward to having that back in my hands. And sometimes when you don't spray all the time, like myself, you have a little bit of a difficult time gauging the hardeners and the temperature, and that was sort of the case here. So my first coat, I was thinking, went on a little bit drier than I would have liked to. It was drying a little quick. So I ended up switching or putting in a little bit more of the slower hardener on the second one to give me a little bit more time to flow out this clear. So the first coat went on a little bit more textury, a little more orange peely than I would have liked it to, but that happens. Every job too, a lot of guys always go on about having this perfectly smooth finish, and that's not really realistic either. I mean, in this case here with the fast clear, with too fast of a hardener, it's going to be an exaggeration of that. But just keep that in your mind. There's no such thing as a perfectly flat finish without polishing that I've seen, unless you want to break every VOC law in existence and over reduce your clear to no end and then pile on 20 coats of clear, which is going to die back, and you have to polish anyway. So in my experience, there's no way of getting around polishing if you want to have that perfectly flat finish. But again, we're on a Toyota Yaris, so I don't even know why I'm talking about that, to be honest with you. Anyway, we've got the first coat on, and that's going to take about 5 minutes to dry. It dries pretty quick, generally between 5 to 10 minutes. This was on the quicker end of that spectrum, so I had my second coat ready to go not too long after the first one. So the second coat going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is go around and do all my offsets first. So I'm going to do all of the inside edges, and then I'm going to move around to the outside surfaces. So yeah, I guess I've run out of things to talk about on this job. So maybe I can talk about some other things that have been driving me nuts, like those new flat finishes. I don't know. I was walking through Chrysler lot today, and I noticed that they have flat finishes coming out on, I don't know what the car is called. It's like the new Neon. And I looked over and they had this Dodge Charger, an orange one, flat finish again. So, moving forward, I think the life of a painter is going to get a little bit more difficult, because not only do you have to worry about matching the color, now we're going to get into having to match the gloss level. And, I can see some definite challenges right there. So, things never seem to get easier. They always look for more difficult things they can do with pigment. And another actual example of that would be on the Mercedes. They have, I forget what, liquid metal, I believe it is called. And, the application process for that is because it's such a fine metallic. You have to finish off your blends really, really fine. And the application process with that is pretty intense. They even recommend turning the lights off, checking it over with an artificial light to make sure that you don't have any modeling going on. It's just such a finicky, sensitive metallic to spray. So, if I get the chance to do one of those, I'm going to make sure I definitely have a video recorder pretty close to me, because that's one that would be pretty interesting to see. So that color I'm speaking of is called Alubeam, Alubeam, if you want to Google it and see what that looks like. And I think it comes in both matte and the gloss kind of. There's a few different offshoots of that color. So, I feel bad for anybody working in a Mercedes dealer that has to see these colors. But, I'm sure I'll run into one at some point. And, even if I can get my hands on some to try and spray out just to see kind of what it looks like and how finicky it really is, that'd be kind of cool. So I'll see what I can do with that. So it looks like we're in the home stretch here, just finishing up this rocker, last little bit of clear coat, and it's in the books. Now when I'm done, usually I'll look down the side of it, and you try and look down the side as you go so you can see if there's any dry spray. And at this point, even if I were to really spot anything too high up on the panel, there's not much you can do about it except polish it after, because if you're to try and spot something in up high, you're going to create more dry spray, and that's going to be an issue. So a lot of times you just have to live with it and then just polish it out after. It's a little bit safer that way. Or just do it perfectly the first time, and then you don't have to worry about it at all. All right, so there you have it. It looks like this one is in the books. I'd say she turned out not too shabby. A little bit of dirt, not too bad. There's a little bit. It went on a little dry in the one quarter near the sail, where it could use a little bit of a polish after. But other than that, I don't think we're going to see this car again. We got a good color match going on from that fender to the hood. So, we have that factory look from the fender to the bumper. And I'm sure that they will be quite happy with this one. But you never know. Some people they'll always find something to complain about, like that scratch that was on the inside of the door on the other side that I knew about when I picked it up the second that I walked in there. Yeah, that wasn't there when I brought that into you guys. So you know how it goes. But anyway, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and make sure you leave me a comment, because I love hearing from you. So I really do. So I want to make sure everybody's doing well. And I guess that's it. So thanks again. We'll see you next time. Later.